Chapter 4 Dark and Darker. The Bolton mine was dark and cold. 3 steps inside, and the boys could see their breath. 6 steps, and Scott put on his hat. 9 steps, and they needed flashlights to see. 12 steps, and they couldn't see the entrance. "I don't like this," Scott whispered. "Don't be a wuss," Rico repeated. "How do we find our way back?" Scott asked. Well, there's only one tunnel until it splits into 3. "Then we'll play it by ear," Rico told him. "Now keep quiet. I'm pretty sure Clay Prentice is in here someplace." Scott was afraid outside the mine. Now his fear was even worse. They should have brought some way to mark the path. They should have brought bigger flashlights. They should have brought warmer clothes. Scott did not know a mine would be so dark, or so cold, or so wet. Each breath made a cloud of steam in the air. The Bolton mine was an old one. These days, mines have big shafts and tunnels. They have lights and fans and clean air. The miners go down in cars and use big machines to get the coal. But the Bolton mine had none of that. The top was held up by wood beams, not steel. There were no lights. The air smelled like wet, rotting dirt. Scott would not have gone down, not on his own, but Rico just pushed ahead. If Rico was afraid, he did not let it show. The roof of the mine was so low that both boys had to crouch. They walked like old men with their heads down. Water on the floor soaked their feet. "How far do we have to go?" Scott asked. "Not sure," Rico said. "Your map wasn't to scale, you know." "Yeah, we've been under for quite a while." Rico pushed the button on his watch. "More like 10 minutes, Scott said no more. He was scared, cold, and hungry, but he let Rico lead on. What choice did he have? Turn around and go back by himself? Rico would never let him live it down. "Look," Rico whispered after a few more minutes, "this is where the tunnel splits in 3. Which way do we go?" Scott tried to remember. An hour ago he had drawn a map. Now his mind was blank. Left, I think," Scott replied. He could have pulled his map from his pocket, but he didn't check it. Rico led the way. The tunnel on the left wasn't as wide as the first. The roof was a little bit lower, the air a little bit colder. They walked for another 10 minutes, then Rico stopped them. I don't think this is right," he said. "Why not?" Scott asked. "We should be in a big room," Rico replied. "That's what you drew on your map. It made sense, too. The miners would dig for coal in the big rooms. Then the ponies would take it out to the tunnels. Remember that book we read?" Scott wasn't thinking about a book. His problem was right in front of him. "So we're lost?" Scott asked. A sudden bolt of fear shot to his heart. They were way underground. No one knew they were here. Scott's map might be all wrong. It was cold and dark and scary, and now they were lost. Scott felt like crying or screaming for help. "No, we just have to go back," Rico told him. "Where's that map of yours?" Scott handed the map to his friend. He saw his hand trembling as he held the paper. "You scared?" Rico asked. "No," Scott lied, "just freezing." Rico looked down at the map while Scott pointed one flashlight at it. Then Rico shook his head. "You dork," he declared. "Can't you tell your right from your left?" "Yeah, sure I can." "Well, I doubt it," Rico shot back. "We should have taken the right-hand tunnel. This one doesn't go anywhere." Scott felt ashamed. He should have checked his own map. Now they had wasted 10 minutes and would waste another 10 minutes going back. "Come on," Rico said, disgusted. He turned quickly and knocked into his friend's hand. Scott was holding the flashlight in that hand. In a second, the flashlight smashed to the ground and went out. Rico swore. Scott picked up the flashlight and tried to get it going. He popped out the batteries and twisted the lens. No luck. It was dead. "Great," Rico said. Now we've got just one light." And if yours goes out, Scott added, we're in real trouble. There was a moment of silence in the dark, wet air. The boys looked at each other. Scott was shaking from the cold, or from fear, or both. Rico was shaking too, breathing hard. You know what I think? Rico said at last. What? I think we better get out of here, like fast.